The moment of silence, the hall was full that evening. Leaders, journalists, and thinkers had all gathered, waiting for what seemed like an ordinary dialogue between powerful figures. The lights were bright, the cameras were ready, and every breath felt heavy. People had come expecting sharp words, political arguments, and strong opinions, but no one was prepared for what would unfold. Donald Trump, with his usual confidence, walked to the center of the stage. His presence always carried weight. He spoke loudly, his voice echoing through the room. He spoke of power, of strength, and of nations that rose and fell. Then, in a sudden shift, his words turned toward India. He underestimated the country. He spoke as if India's rise was just luck, as if it was carried only by numbers and not by true talent or resilience. Many in the audience grew tense. Some looked at each other, unsure if they should react. Others leaned forward, sensing that a spark had been lit that could grow into a fire. Among the audience sat Sundar Pichai. Calm, gentle, and thoughtful, he carried himself with quiet strength. He was not a man of loud speeches or heated arguments. Yet, inside him, memories began to stir. He thought of his childhood in Chennai, of his father teaching him values of humility, of his mother's kindness, of the nights when electricity was scarce, and yet dreams burned bright. He thought of his journey from small streets to leading one of the world's largest technology companies. As Trump continued, Sundar's silence grew more powerful than the words on stage. He knew he could not let this moment pass, not because he wished to argue, but because respect had to be protected. Respect for his country, for its people, and for every child who dreamed of something bigger than their circumstances. When his name was finally called, Sundar stood slowly. The room quieted. Cameras turned toward him, and the weight of expectation filled the hall. Some whispered that he would avoid confrontation. Others expected him to defend India with numbers and achievements. But Sundar had something different in mind. He began softly, his voice steady and calm. He did not raise it. He did not rush. "When I think of India," he said, "I do not think of charts or statistics. I think of my mother, who cooked with love no matter how little she had. I think of my father, who showed me how respect can carry a man further than pride. I think of millions of young people who work hard each day, not seeking applause, but simply seeking dignity." The words settled like a wave of warmth over the audience. Trump leaned back slightly, watching him. Sundar continued, "Strength is not only measured by weapons or wealth. True strength is in humility. It is in kindness. It is in the way a child helps his mother, the way a stranger opens a door, the way a nation chooses respect even when it is underestimated." The silence that followed was deep. It was not empty, but full of emotion. Many in the hall felt their eyes grow heavy with tears. Reporters who had come expecting conflict found themselves writing about compassion. People who had been ready for anger discovered they were witnessing history shaped by humility. For a moment, even Trump did not respond. He looked at Sundar with a thoughtful expression, as if weighing what had just been said. This was not a battle of pride. It was something more human, something that reached beyond politics and touched the roots of what it means to lead. The audience waited. They knew this was only the beginning. There would be more words, more tension, and more lessons. But already, in the very first exchange, the tone had shifted. Sundar had reminded the world that respect, once spoken with honesty, could silence even the loudest voices. And so, the stage was set. What began as a clash of power was slowly turning into a story of humility, resilience, and unexpected kindness. The journey of this night had just begun, and no one in that hall would leave unchanged. The weight of words, the silence in the hall stretched longer than anyone expected. Reporters shifted in their seats, pens frozen over their notebooks. Cameras zoomed closer, catching every detail on Sundar Pichai's calm face and Donald Trump's unreadable expression. People had come for a battle of egos, but what they saw was something rare. Sundar's words were not sharp, yet they cut through the noise. They were not loud, yet they echoed louder than any shout. Trump leaned forward at last. His voice dropped lower, less forceful than before. "You speak softly," he said, "but the world is not soft. Power decides respect. Without power, kindness is ignored." The words carried weight, but Sundar did not flinch. He thought again of his childhood, of long walks with his father under streetlights that flickered. His father had once told him, "Strength is not only about winning, it is about carrying others when they cannot walk on their own." Sundar remembered those words, and they shaped his reply. "Power can demand fear," Sundar said gently, "but only respect can last. Fear fades the moment power is gone. Respect remains even when the person is far away. India is not only rising because of numbers. India is rising because its people believe in respect. They respect knowledge, they respect hard work, they respect family, and they respect strangers too." A murmur ran through the audience. Some nodded, some smiled quietly, and a few wiped their eyes. It was not just a reply. It was a reminder of values everyone longed to see in leaders. Trump's eyes narrowed. He was not used to being answered in this way, without anger, without submission, but with dignity. The hall seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if this would grow into confrontation. Then, unexpectedly, Sundar paused. He looked not only at Trump, but at the entire hall. "I am not here to argue," he said. "I am here to tell you what millions of Indians already live every day. They face challenges, they face struggle, but they continue with resilience and humility. That is the strength I want the world to see." It was at that moment that Narendra Modi, sitting at the edge of the stage, leaned slightly forward. His eyes shone with quiet pride. He had not spoken yet, but his presence carried weight. He knew these words came not from politics, but from lived truth. Reporters scribbled quickly, but they found themselves writing more about emotions than strategies. A young journalist in the front row whispered, "This is not a debate. This is history being written." Trump gave a small smile, one that was hard to read. "History," he said slowly, "is written by those who are remembered. Let us see if respect can truly be remembered." His words hung heavy, half challenge and half curiosity. The audience stirred. Some wondered if Trump was preparing a stronger response. Others wondered if he had been touched by Sundar's calm. But the night was far from over. Behind the respectful words, tension still moved quietly. Would humility stand strong against pride? Would kindness survive in a hall built for power? The answer would not come easily, but every heart in that room felt the journey had only just begun. The quiet test after Sundar's words, the hall felt different. People were no longer waiting for a fight. They were waiting for truth. They wanted to see if humility could really hold its place against pride. Trump adjusted his tie, his eyes fixed on Sundar. The pause stretched, and then he spoke. "You talk about respect," he said, "but the world respects results, not stories. America became strong because it acted, not because it waited. Tell me, Sundar, does India act, or does it just dream?" The challenge was sharp, meant to stir the room. Some gasped. A few turned to Sundar, curious if he would finally lose his calm. But Sundar did not rush. He breathed slowly, remembering the nights his father stayed late after work, repairing electric parts at their small table, showing him that action did not always mean noise. Sometimes action was silent, unseen, but still powerful. Sundar's voice remained steady. "Dreams are the beginning of every action," he said. "A child dreams of learning, and he studies harder. A young woman dreams of building something new, and she works day and night until she creates it. India acts every single day, but its actions are not always on the front page. They live in the quiet dedication of millions who never give up." The words struck a deep note. Many in the audience thought of their own families, their own quiet struggles that no one celebrated but that shaped their lives. Then Sundar added something unexpected. "When I was a boy, I wanted a computer. It was not easy. We could not afford it quickly. I had to wait. I had to study from books. I had to share with others. But when the day finally came, I knew how to use it with respect. That respect made me build a path that led me here today. So yes, India dreams. But India also acts with patience and resilience. The room grew quiet again. Trump looked at him closely. For a moment, his confident expression softened, almost as if he remembered his own past struggles. But just as quickly, the firmness returned. Modi shifted slightly in his seat. He saw that this conversation was not just between two men. It was between two ways of seeing the world. One spoke of loud power, the other of silent strength. Both carried lessons, but only one could win the hearts of those listening. Reporters scribbled harder, knowing they would have to capture this rare moment in detail. Social media feeds outside the hall were already filling with clips, each one sparking debates across the world. But inside the hall, no one looked away. Every eye was on Sundar, waiting for the next exchange, wondering how far humility could truly go before pride tried to break it. The test was not over. In fact, it was only beginning. The turning point. The hall was heavy with silence once again. Sundar's words had touched many hearts, but Trump was not ready to step back. His nature was to challenge, to push, to test. He leaned forward, his voice steady but stronger now. You speak of patience, you speak of respect, but the world does not wait. If a nation waits too long, it is left behind. If it does not show its strength, it is ignored. Tell me, Sundar, is India ready to lead, or will it always stay in the shadows of others? The words echoed, and for the first time, a few people in the audience felt their hearts sink. It was a direct blow, a question that could not be answered with only memories or gentle phrases. Sundar knew this moment mattered. He closed his eyes for a second. In that quiet second, images of his childhood came rushing back. He saw his mother carrying groceries home with tired hands, but still smiling. He saw his father reading books about technology late into the night, even when the lights flickered. He saw himself as a young boy, walking down narrow streets with hope larger than the sky above. When he opened his eyes, his voice carried a new weight. India does not live in the shadows, he said softly. India shines every day, in ways the world sometimes forgets to see. When a farmer wakes before sunrise and works until his hands bleed, he leads his family to survival. When a teacher in a small village teaches children without books, she leads them to a brighter future. Leadership is not always about standing on the biggest stage. It is about lifting people when they are down. A wave of emotion spread across the hall. Some nodded with tears in their eyes. Others looked down, reflecting on their own lives. Trump shifted in his seat. The firmness in his eyes remained, but he could not deny the truth in Sundar's words. He gave a small laugh, almost as if to break the tension. That sounds noble, he said, but the world remembers winners, not farmers, not teachers. History is written by the powerful. This time, Sundar looked directly at him, his calm gaze unwavering. History is written by memory, not just by power. When people remember kindness, when they remember respect, those memories last longer than any empire. Even the strongest rulers fade, but the lessons of humility survive for centuries. The hall erupted in soft murmurs. Some clapped quietly, others whispered that they had never heard such a reply spoken with such calm. At that moment, Narendra Modi finally rose from his seat. The hall froze. His voice had not been heard all night, but everyone knew that when he spoke, it would carry weight. He stepped toward the microphone, his hands joined in a simple gesture of greeting. His voice was warm, yet firm. Strength is not about standing above others, he said. True strength is walking with them. India does not seek to rise alone. India seeks to rise with the world. If we are underestimated, we answer not with anger, but with action, not with pride, but with dignity. The hall filled with applause. People rose to their feet. It was not the loud cheer of politics, but the emotional applause of hearts moved by honesty. Trump looked around, then back at Sundar and Modi. His expression was hard to read. It was no longer only pride. There was thoughtfulness there, and perhaps a shadow of respect. The night was changing. The clash was no longer about winning or losing. It was becoming a story of lessons, of how humility could stand against pride, and how kindness could reshape even the harshest stage. But the journey was not over. Ahead waited the most difficult moments, the ones that would test not only words but the very spirit of those present. The fragile silence, the applause faded slowly, but the silence that followed was heavier than before. People in the hall felt something rare, something they would carry long after the night ended. It was not about politics anymore. It was about humanity. Donald Trump leaned back, his face calm but unreadable. The confident energy he always carried seemed quieter now. His eyes moved from Sundar Pichai to Narendra Modi, as if measuring both men. He spoke again, but his voice was lower, slower. "You speak of respect," he said. "You speak of dignity. But let me ask you this. If respect is so powerful, why do nations still fight? Why do leaders still choose war over peace, pride over humility? If respect is the answer, why has the world not changed?" The hall grew restless. It was a sharp question, one that could not be ignored. Even those who agreed with Sundar and Modi felt a sting of doubt. Sundar's eyes softened, and he looked down for a moment. Then he raised his head and spoke with quiet honesty. "Because respect is not easy," he said. "It takes strength to stay calm when insulted. It takes courage to forgive when hurt. Many leaders, many people choose the easy path of anger. But those who choose respect, even when it is hard, plant seeds that grow into lasting change." He paused, his voice trembling just slightly with emotion. "When my mother sent me to school, we did not always have enough money, but she respected education more than comfort. She chose the hard path, and that path gave me everything I am today. Respect is not about avoiding struggle. It is about choosing struggle with dignity, so the future can be better." The audience sat frozen. A few tears slipped quietly down the faces of those who had once thought of respect as weakness. Narendra Modi added his voice, strong and steady. "When I was a young boy, I sold tea with my father at a railway station. I was not born into wealth or power. I was underestimated. But my father taught me something simple. Every person who buys tea deserves respect. Whether rich or poor, whether powerful or ordinary, respect is their right. That lesson has stayed with me. And it is the lesson I bring as Prime Minister. India will never rise by crushing others. It will rise by lifting others." His words stirred the hall like a wave. People clapped, not out of duty but from true emotion. They felt the sincerity, the pain, and the resilience behind his voice. Trump sat quietly. He tapped his fingers on the table, lost in thought. For the first time that evening, he did not reply immediately. He looked at Sundar, then at Modi, then at the crowd. He finally spoke, softer than anyone expected. "Maybe I underestimated something tonight," he said. A ripple spread across the audience. It was not a full concession, not a defeat, but it was the first sign of opening, the first sign that respect might truly have touched him. Yet the night was not done. Challenges remained. Hearts had begun to move, but the true test would come when respect and pride collided in the most unexpected way. The fragile silence in the hall was proof that something powerful was unfolding, something the world would remember for years to come. The breaking point, the hall was no longer just a stage. It felt like the heart of the world, beating louder with every word spoken. People leaned forward in their seats, waiting for what would happen next. Donald Trump, still seated, kept his gaze locked on Sundar Pichai. His fingers stopped tapping, his posture grew firm again. The moment of softness he had shown earlier faded, replaced by the strong image he was known for. "You speak with heart," he said, "but the world is not ruled by heart. It is ruled by deals, by power, by who stands taller. Tell me, Sundar, can humility sign a deal? Can kindness stop a war? Can respect protect a nation from enemies?" The words pierced the silence. They were not spoken in anger, but in challenge. The hall held its breath. Even those who admired Sundar's calm wondered if this was the moment he would finally be cornered. Sundar looked at Trump with steady eyes. His voice did not shake. "A deal made without respect will break," he said. A war fought without respect will never end, and a nation that protects itself with only fear will live in fear forever. But a nation built on respect can turn enemies into partners. It can turn strangers into friends. That is not weakness. That is the highest strength. His words moved like a quiet storm. People felt chills, as if they were hearing not just a reply but a truth that touched every corner of human life. Trump leaned back, silent. For once, he did not argue. Instead, his expression showed something rare: reflection. Narendra Modi rose again. His voice carried like steady thunder. "America has power," he said. "India has resilience. But tonight we are not here to measure who is stronger. We are here to show that strength without respect is dangerous, and respect without strength is incomplete. The world needs both. The world needs balance." The hall shook with applause. This time it was not polite. It was powerful, unstoppable, as if people's hearts demanded to be heard. Yet, amidst the applause, Sundar spoke again, softer, almost like a whisper. "I once read that when people are underestimated, they have two choices. They can become bitter, or they can rise with dignity. India has chosen dignity, and tonight I hope the world chooses it too." The words touched everyone. Some audience members stood up, clapping with tears in their eyes. Others remained seated, hands over their mouths, overwhelmed by the weight of what they were witnessing. Donald Trump slowly stood up. The hall went still. Every camera turned toward him, every reporter ready to capture his next move. Would he push back? Would he dismiss everything? Or would he surprise everyone once again? The breaking point had arrived. The air felt electric, heavy with suspense. The answer was about to come, and it would decide whether this night would end as a clash of pride or a moment of unity the world would never forget. The moment of respect. Donald Trump stood in silence. The entire hall froze with him. The applause that had filled the room moments earlier faded into stillness. Everyone's eyes were fixed on him, waiting, almost afraid to breathe. For a long moment, he did not speak. His face was unreadable. Some thought he was about to dismiss everything he had just heard. Others thought he might challenge again. But when he finally opened his mouth, his words shocked everyone. "When I was younger," he said slowly, "people underestimated me too. They thought I would not succeed. They laughed at me. But I worked hard and I stood tall. Maybe I forgot that others also rise the same way. Maybe I forgot that respect is also a kind of power." The hall gasped softly. It was rare for Trump to admit anything so personal, even more rare to speak of being underestimated. He turned toward Sundar Pichai. "You speak with calm. You remind me that strength does not always shout. Maybe I was wrong to see India only through numbers. Maybe I should see it through people like you, through stories like yours." The room erupted in applause, but Trump lifted his hand, signaling for silence. He looked at Narendra Modi next. "Prime Minister, you spoke of walking with others. That is not easy. But maybe it is time the world learns from India's way. Maybe humility has more strength than we give it credit for." Modi bowed his head slightly, his eyes shining with quiet gratitude. "The world does not need to choose pride or humility," he said. "It needs both held in balance. India will always stand for dignity, for kindness, for resilience, and we hope the world will stand with us." Sundar stepped forward. His voice was soft, but it carried through the hall like music. When respect is given, history changes. Tonight is proof that even the most powerful can pause, can reflect, can listen. That is how history is made, not through pride alone, but through the courage to show humility. The audience rose to their feet. The applause this time was thunderous, unstoppable, and filled with emotion. People clapped not for a victory of one man over another, but for the lesson they had all witnessed. Reporters wrote with trembling hands. Cameras caught faces wet with tears. People around the world, watching the broadcast, felt something awaken inside them. It was not about nations anymore. It was about humanity, about the truth that respect could transform even the hardest hearts. Donald Trump extended his hand toward Sundar Pichai. Sundar hesitated only for a moment, then shook it with calm dignity. The hall cheered louder. Then Trump turned to Narendra Modi and shook his hand as well. Three men, different in style and story, stood together on one stage. That image became more powerful than any speech. It spread across newspapers, screens, and conversations worldwide. People called it the night when humility stood tall, when respect made history. As the lights dimmed and the hall emptied, Sundar walked quietly backstage. He did not feel like a man who had won. He felt like a boy again, standing in the narrow streets of Chennai, remembering his father's words, "Strength is carrying others when they cannot walk." That night, Sundar knew those words had finally found their place in history and the world. Watching in silence, understood that respect had the power to change even the loudest voices.